Good afternoon, and welcome to those just joining us now for Radcliffe Day. To those of you who were with us earlier today, I hope you enjoyed the break and the virtual view into the Schlesinger Library's archives. It is now my distinct honor, on behalf of the Harvard Radcliffe Institute, to recognize Melinda French Gates as our 2021 Radcliffe Medalist. With optimism and empathy, determination and insight, Melinda achieved early success in business and then dedicated herself to philanthropy. As co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, she steers the world's largest philanthropic organization. Since its inception, the foundation has grappled with some of the world's most complex challenges, and it has invested billions of dollars in projects that span agriculture, education, economic development, and global health, including major efforts to fight malaria, polio, tuberculosis, and AIDS. Melinda has also directed the foundation to focus more on improving the lives of women and girls. Why? To quote Melinda, because when you lift up women, you lift up humanity. She was born Melinda Ann French in Dallas, Texas. Her father was an aerospace engineer who worked on the Apollo space missions. Her mother helped run the family's small residential real estate investment business while raising Melinda and her 3 siblings. Melinda's parents encouraged her to dream big, and as a child, she was inspired by a female mathematician who worked with her father. Melinda's own technical aptitude emerged early. As a student at Ursuline Academy, a Catholic girls' school in Dallas, she learned computer programming from a dedicated math teacher who had insisted that the school invest in such opportunities. Reflecting on that teacher's influence, Melinda has said, "She was the first advocate for women in tech I ever knew, and the coming years would show me how many more we need." Melinda was hooked, and she and her sister began to borrow their neighbor's computer until their parents bought an Apple III machine, which Melinda also used to help manage the family's business accounts in VisiCalc, the first spreadsheet program available for personal computers. Melinda graduated first in her class at Ursuline and decided she would study computer science in college. She enrolled in Duke University, where she found herself one of the very few women in computer science. Undeterred, she graduated in 1986 with her bachelor's degree, and a year later, she earned her MBA from Duke's Fuqua School of Business. With a job offer in hand from IBM, Melinda had one more interview at a rapidly growing software company called Microsoft. Melinda told her potential boss at IBM about the Microsoft interview, and the woman was unequivocal. If Microsoft offered Melinda a job, she had to take it. The opportunities would be unparalleled. Well, Melinda took that advice. When Microsoft extended an offer, she accepted and joined the company in 1987. She was the only woman in her hiring class. Melinda began as a product manager for Microsoft Word, and less than a decade later, she was general manager for information products, overseeing a team of some 1,700. Melinda left Microsoft in 1996 and shifted her focus to philanthropy and to raising her children with spouse Bill Gates. In 1999, she and Bill established the Gates Library Foundation, which later became the Gates Learning Foundation, with a mission to enable all US public libraries to provide free internet access. They also established the Gates Millennium Scholars Program to provide college scholarships to students of color. Meanwhile, they began to focus on global health. A 1993 trip to Africa had brought them face to face with extreme poverty, and they sought out more information about the millions of people, especially children, dying of preventable diseases worldwide. They were determined to act, and in the year 2000, they pledged $750 million to Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, to help children in low-income countries receive vaccinations. That same year, they combined the William H. Gates Foundation and the Gates Learning Foundation to form the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, with Melinda in a central role as co-chair. Founded on the belief that all lives have equal value, the foundation's mission is ambitious: to create a world where every person has the opportunity to live a healthy, productive life. Now, it would take hours to describe the full scope of work and enormous impact of the Gates Foundation. Instead, I'll quote President Barack Obama, who awarded Melinda and Bill the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2016. He said, quote, "The Gates Foundation has worked to provide life-saving medical care to millions, boosting clean water supplies, improving education for our children, rallying aggressive international action on climate change, cutting childhood mortality in half. The list could go on," and indeed it does. Early on, Melinda steered the Gates Foundation while staying largely out of the public eye, a decision she made both for the sake of her young children and also because she felt she had much to learn. A self-described perfectionist, Melinda wanted to read deeply and to go on study trips. As she explored the available scholarship and traveled, talking to women around the world, Melinda zeroed in on the centrality of contraceptives for improving health, reducing poverty, and advancing gender equality. Melinda was still reluctant to become a public advocate, but as her focus sharpened and as others encouraged her to use her platform, she recognized the substantial impact she could make by stepping into the spotlight. In 2012, Melinda co-sponsored the London Summit on Family Planning with the UK government. The summit brought together experts, activists, and world leaders, and it was described at the time as a breakthrough for the world's poorest women and girls. In the end, it raised billions of dollars to provide voluntary contraceptives in the global South. By 2016, Melinda had established gender equity as a top priority for the Gates Foundation. She allocated $80 million to data collection efforts focused on women's lives and work around the world, saying, quote, "In too many areas, data still doesn't exist, and often where it does exist, it's sexist. It misses women and girls entirely, or undercounts and undervalues their economic and social contributions to their families, communities, and countries." For Melinda, true to her background as a computer scientist, data collection is essential groundwork. She tells us, quote, "We can't close the gender gap without closing the data gap." A gender equality division now integrates gender into all facets of the foundation works, and its investments have been transformative. As Melinda declares in her best-selling book, The Moment of Lift, women's rights and society's health and wealth rise together. The COVID-19 pandemic, which continues to rage in much of the world, has exacerbated gender inequality in many ways, as we heard this morning. It should come as no surprise then that Melinda has been at the vanguard of the global response. Her contributions underscore her life's work. She's marshaling resources for people living in poverty around the world, highlighting the distinct challenges facing women and girls, and advocating for a more equal future. Closer to home, Melinda is advancing gender equity through her investment company, Pivotal Ventures, which she founded in 2015. In 2019, she committed $1 billion to expanding women's power and influence in this country. a bold move that was the inspiration for our panel discussion earlier today. Melinda is investing in people and organizations in 3 key areas: advancing women in sectors with significant societal impact, like technology and government, breaking down obstacles to women's professional advancement, and mobilizing diverse stakeholders to push for reform where it's needed most. In rolling out her ambitious and urgent strategy for change, Melinda said, quote, "Women's potential is worth investing in, and the people and organizations working to improve women's lives are too." Here at Radcliffe, we couldn't agree more, and we look forward to all that Melinda will accomplish in her next chapter. Melinda says that she can't point to a particular moment when she realized the vital foundational importance of gender equality, but now she's one of the cause's most powerful champions. I'm thrilled to honor Melinda French Gates for her many achievements and for her steadfast commitment to improving the lives of millions and advancing gender equity around the world. And now I'm pleased to introduce David Rubenstein, who will engage Melinda in this afternoon's keynote conversation. David is a financier, an author, and a co-founder and co-chairman of the Carlyle Group, a global private investment firm. He's also an important philanthropist and a sounding board for the many leaders he engages on his Bloomberg program, The David Rubenstein Show, Peer-to-Peer Conversations. David serves as chairman of the boards of the trustees of the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts and the Council on Foreign Relations, and he's a member of the American Philosophical Society. David is also a true university citizen here at Harvard. He's a fellow of the Harvard Corporation, chair of the University Global Advisory Council, and a member of the Harvard Business School Board of Dean's Advisors, the Harvard Kennedy School Dean's Executive Board, and the Harvard Kennedy School Center for Public Leadership Advisory Board. We're so glad to have him with us today. Without further ado, I'll give the virtual floor to David Rubenstein and our 2021 Radcliffe medalist, Melinda French Gates.
Thank you very much, Dean. And thank you very much, Melinda, for taking the time to be with us today.
Thanks for having me.
And congratulations on winning the medal.
Thanks.
So, Melinda, when you were involved with the foundation in terms of going around the world, looking at problems of health and so forth, particularly I'd say in places like Africa, you began from your book to realize that the problems were often due to the fact that women were being treated unequally. Can you kind of relate how this came about, and was it a gradual kind of a realization, or did something hit you one moment and you said, I've got to do something about gender inequality?
Well, thanks, David. I've been traveling. By the time I really started to see the gender inequality, I'd been traveling for over a decade for the foundation, and you almost couldn't but help notice it. I mean, we would be there to talk about malaria or vaccines, and yet you would see who was the center of the family. It was the woman. Who decided to take the child to the healthcare clinic to get the vaccine or to deal with the bout of malaria? Who was struggling to have money to do that? It was the woman. And so through all the travels I was doing, really for health, global health, it just kept hitting me over the head over and over again. And then it got to the point where I just couldn't turn away from it.
Okay. So let me ask you about one of the interesting situations that I got from reading your excellent book on this subject. You were trying to save lives in the emerging markets, Africa, the poorest parts of the world, but then it came to you that the idea that maybe not having as many lives would be a better thing because some of the families really couldn't afford the children that they had. So was it hard for you as a committed Catholic to say, I'm going to be supporting contraceptives? Was that really difficult for you to do that? And did you get a lot of criticism for that?
So I definitely had to wrestle with my faith when it came to contraceptives. But I would be out in so many places around the world. I don't care if it was India or Bangladesh or a country in Africa. And I would be there to talk about vaccines. But women kept bringing up contraceptives. They kept saying to me, but what about that shot I was able to get in my arm 5 months ago, and now I can't get one because that's the predominant type of contraceptives they use, particularly in Africa. And it became this literally this cry for women. They would say to me, don't you see, I have 5 children. I can barely feed them. It's not fair to them to have another one. Or I just had a child. If I have another one in the next 2 years, my body can't take it. And so it became this rallying cry. And I had to really wrestle with my faith, because while this is a man-made religion that says women shouldn't use contraceptives, I know that Catholic women all over the world use them, including myself. And I know that my religion cares about saving children. And I thought at the end of the day, we have to do what these women are saying to us they need to be fair to their current children.
Well, you describe in your book, and you described in speeches, how very often women would come to you and say, please take my baby home with you. I'm willing to give up my child. What is it like when a woman says, here's my child, and you don't know what to tell her?
It is one of the most heartbreaking things. I mean, think about it. No mother wants to give up their child. And I would be there just as a woman in a pair of khaki pants and a t-shirt, a Western woman from the United States. But they would say, I can't feed this child. If you take them back to the US, they'll be fed, they can get a good education. And so to see a woman in that desperate of a situation is just unbelievable and really heartbreaking.
Now, the pandemic has set back everybody a great deal, but particularly in the poorest countries in the world. And I assume the effect on women has been much greater in the developing markets than here. Have you had any recognition of this? Have you seen this, or these virtually, about what the impact has been on women in the developing markets that you're focused on so much as a result of the pandemic?
Well, women all over the world have been affected. In the United States, women have lost 2 million jobs. In South Africa, women have lost 2/3 of all the jobs lost were lost by women. Women-owned businesses went out of business at a rate of 41% compared to 7% for men on the continent of Africa. In Southeast Asia, women-led businesses went out of business 51% compared to 7% for men. So women are having these profound impacts about being pushed or leaving the workforce. And it's because of this issue we face all over the world, which is caregiving. It's the unpaid work that women do at home. And it's that their jobs are often very fragile. And so if we're going to build back this world, we're going to have to address, if we want a full recovery, economic recovery, we have got to address these barriers and these gaps for women and for people of color.
In the developing market, the unpaid work done by women is far greater than even in the developed world, which is still significant. Did you see that all the time when you went there, that the amount of work that women had to do for which was unpaid, and they was uncompensated and wasn't recognized to some extent?
Yes. I mean, women in some parts of the world, in India, for instance, do 6 hours more a day than their husbands, 6 hours. So they're the ones, pulling the water up from the well or going to the well. They're the ones that are cooking. They're the ones that are tending to the farm animals. You see that in emerging markets in all places in Africa. But the reason to point this out is even in the United States, women do 95 minutes more a day than a man of unpaid labor. And so if you think about 95 minutes, or you think 6 hours compared to 1 hour in India, you average that across the world for a woman's life, it's 7 years of her life. Now, I know a lot of women that could get their MBA and their PhD in 7 years, or have a job in the economy that they want to do. So we have to look at this burden, this unpaid work, and we have to take down that barrier. And there are ways to do that.
What about the impact on health of women as a result of the pandemic? Women tended to be greater healthcare workers, and women tended, in some cases, not to get the healthcare treatment that men got. Do you have any evidence yet that the women were suffering in their health much more because of the pandemic than men?
Definitely. So women make up 70% of the healthcare workforce around the world. So they are the ones who take care of us, right? And what we're seeing is that their mental health, the statistics are massively on the rise for women's mental health issues because of being home and trying to juggle, for instance, their kids' work and school and their work, or going into the healthcare sector. We're also seeing violence and abuse is on the rise. I don't care if you're in Canada or France or South Africa or Brazil or the United States. And so again, that's an enormous barrier that pushes a woman back. And so COVID's had profound effects for women.
Now, post-pandemic, we don't really know what's going to happen, but do you expect that the hole that women have found themselves in as a result of the pandemic is going to be harder to get out of, and getting back to gender equality is going to be much more difficult as a result of the pandemic in developed markets and developing markets?
Everywhere. And so it's why, I mean, we've already seen families, far more families pushed back into poverty around the world. And it's why when we do economic recovery, we have to be specific about programs that help women get it back into the workforce, help them find a place for child care, help them have paid family medical leave so that they can take time off if with the birth of a child, make sure that we actually invest in women-led businesses. If we don't make these investments, we're going to lose a generation of women from the workforce. And I don't think that's what the world wants. I know prime minister after president who talks about wanting women in the workforce because they get a more robust economy and it's better for everybody.
So recently, as we heard from the dean, you set up a Pivotal Ventures Fund. Is that fund designed to make money? Is it designed to provide social benefits? What is its purpose, and how has it worked since you set it up?
Yeah, so Pivotal Ventures is a company that I created for social progress and innovation in the United States. We do both grant making and we make investments. And so we invest in things like new childcare solutions. They're innovative, women-led businesses. We make sure more women get into technology and into finance because those are the places that are fueling our society. So we work with a whole host of partners and advocates to advance women and to advance people of color.
How would you assess the difference between the gender equality in developed markets and developing markets? You've obviously been in both. Do you think there's enough progress made in developed markets, or not that much compared to what you would like? And developing markets is much further behind the developed markets, or how would you assess the difference between the two?
Well, there are a whole host of indicators that people use to measure gender equality in any country. So it has to do with policies in place and the reality on the ground. I used to think when I would travel to places around the globe, like low-income countries, oh, women aren't far enough along, and we're so much farther in the United States. What I came back to learn is I had to turn the question back on myself and say, how far are we in the United States? We are 208 years away from gender equality in our own country. So there are other countries like the Nordic countries in Europe where they're much further along. But look, there are parliaments in countries in Africa that have far more women than we have in Congress right now in the United States. So it's a mixed bag across the world. And the truth is, women aren't far enough anywhere yet in terms of equality.
When you were growing up in Dallas, you, as we heard, were interested in computer programming, which probably wasn't considered something your parents probably were promoting for you. I don't know what they wanted you to do. I do know that your father wanted you to go to Notre Dame, I guess, and I'm glad you went to Duke, my alma mater as well. But have you ever thought back why it was that you were so interested in computer programming? And were there a lot of men at Duke doing it, and there were very few women at Duke when you were doing it?
Well, I got lucky that in high school, I was good at math, and I saw that my dad's company, he would put women engineers on his team, mathematicians, because he said his teams were better. And I met a lot of those women. So in high school, I had a math teacher who brought computers into the school, and I just got hooked. I already loved puzzles and logic games and math. I got hooked. And then I picked Duke over Notre Dame because they had 2 new labs of computers from IBM that had just come in. But yes, when I got to Duke, there were very few women programming, particularly after freshman year. You could count the number in my computer science classes on one hand of women. And so, yes, it was a very male-dominated field. And to be honest, David, it still is. We have to make more progress of getting more women graduating with computer science degrees because technology is running our lives these days.
So when you decided that you wanted to spend your career in computer programming, did your family say, no, you should go to medical school or law school or something more traditional, or they say that's a good thing for you to do?
My parents both said to us, you go be anything you want to be in life, and we will put you through college without debt. And that was not easy for my parents, but they were always go find your talents, be who you want to be. And that's what they said to me and my three siblings. And it was remarkable.
Now, your father was part of the NASA program, as I remember it, and your mother, kind of with your father, started a real estate company on the side to make extra money. Was that evidence to you that women can start businesses and be successful in business, because that business was successful?
Absolutely. My parents both started this small real estate business, which became our college fund. We all worked on it. But, I watched my mom during the day managing these tenants, managing the real estate business, and raising my three siblings and me. So four of us, and making sure we still had our lunch for school and got a meal on the table and got to school. So it showed me that women can juggle many hats. I saw it wasn't easy, but she did it. And then my dad would come home at night and also work on the business.
So let me ask you what you think universities in this country can do to better educate women about gender equality issues and better educate men about it. Where do you think universities could do a better job?
Yeah, I think you bring up exactly the right point, David, is we have to educate young men and young women. And college is this opportunity where you bring people together from around the community or the country, and they spend 2, 4, 6 years together. And so if we open their minds and we demonstrate in the classroom that women and men are equal, we call on them equally, we expect the same things, and we change the culture and we talk about our history in this area, then I think we send young men and women out in the world saying, hey, I want something different for our generation.
Now, your foundation has been involved in improving education in the United States as well. And have you found big differences between young girls and young boys in the education system? Is there a bias towards girls in the education system that you may have seen as a result of your philanthropic work?
Depends on which school district and which classroom you're in. But what I know is that teachers have to make an enormous effort particularly at middle school, to keep the girls' self-esteem up in math and science. And if teachers are very specific in how they do that, then girls will persist in math and science up through high school and through college. And yet far too few schools do that all over the nation.
So you've become a role model for women around the world, and obviously a role model for men as well because of all the things you've done. Did you have role models when you were growing up, and do you have role models now that you really admire, women who've done great things?
Well, I've been lucky enough to work alongside many what I call enlightened men. One of them today is Mark Suzman, the CEO of the foundation. Um, and but when I look back, my role models were for sure like Mrs. Bauer, my teacher of math and computer science, who brought computers into the school. She taught us that we could learn anything. And then a role model for me, to be frank, the last 15 years and she passed away last year, was Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I mean, her quote of saying, women belong at all places where decisions are being made. That rings in my ear. And she also said, if you're going to fight for something, lead in a way that others will join you. And what I see is when we fight for gender equality or we fight for people of color, you have to come together with a large mixed group. It takes men and women to advance gender equality. It takes people of all types to advance social equity issues for everybody. And so you have to lead in a collaborative way. And she knew that while she was setting policy and law, she also saw how to fight the fight. And that's
So
helpful for me.
over the years, you've met with government officials in the United States and around the world. Do you find a difference between the receptivity of men who are government leaders and women who are government leaders when you're talking about gender equality, or they equally accept the idea that you need to make a change?
Well, again, it depends on where you go. What I know that tends to move more men is data. And it's why I push this data thing so much, is we don't have good data about gender equality. So we are gathering it now as a foundation and as a world. but you see enlightened men in certain situations. So if I walk into, say, Canada, that's further along on social progress, you know, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, he cares as much about women as a woman, right? But in general, women just see the issues more. They see more of society. So it's a more natural conversation with, Chancellor Angela Merkel or the Prime Minister of New Zealand. She just gets it, right? So there are enlightened men, but there are not as many of them out there as I wish there were.
Generally, would you say in the United States compared to Europe, we're still well behind Europe in gender equality and gender knowledge in terms of equal treatment, or you think Europe is about where we are in the United States?
Well, I would say the United States is behind the Nordic countries for sure in Europe. I mean, when you look at, we haven't had a female president yet, or you look at their parliaments, and you look at some of the laws that have been passed, the Nordic countries are far further along than the United States is. And then you have to kind of go country by country in Europe to slice them from there. But I think, they tend to take up things earlier than the United States does.
So you've written an article recently saying there should be a czar for caregiving because we have czars for other things. Why not have a czar for caregiving and something at the White House? Is there any receptivity in the White House to this, or do you think something like this could happen?
So what I care about is the White House coordinating across all the key agencies. And so what the administration decided to do in the end was to elevate the offices that work on gender equality straight up to the chief of staff under the president. That's what you need to do. And boy, is this administration very, very serious about gender equality and really looking at social inequities across the United States. And they're trying to make investments on that so we can get a better recovery.
Now, you've made speeches about and written about the fact that women are actually the last person really in the food chain, because women in developing markets often they have to feed their children, and the last person to eat is often the woman who is in charge of getting the food for everybody else. And I imagine during the pandemic, this has become a bigger and bigger problem. So the whole food supply chain has been very difficult for women in emerging markets, particularly. Is that your observation?
Absolutely. And yet women are 50% of the farmers in these low-income countries. And so we don't reach them with the new seeds or the new techniques for how we water plants that can use less irrigation. And so we have to be very specific in our programming if we're going to reach those women. And guess what? Women make trade-offs. They'll make trade-off if a bean takes 6 hours to cook, which is her time versus 1 hour. They'll also make nutritious trade-offs to go for a crop that's more nutritious for their family. So it's super important to reach them.
You've also observed that women don't have access to mobile phones or the internet very often in some of the emerging markets. And is there a way to really deal with that? And when they do have access to a mobile phone, does it change their life dramatically for the better?
When a woman has access to a mobile phone and a digital bank account, it starts to open up empowerment for her. And so what happens is she can save $1 a day, $2 a day, $3 a day. So when the school tuition becomes due, or when there's a health shock in the family, or she needs to go to market to buy, she doesn't have to ask her husband. She's got assets. And women will tell you all over the world, boy, am I seen differently by my husband, by the oldest son in my family, by my mother-in-law in India, if I have assets. And so closing this mobile data gap for women and the internet gap for women and making sure they have a digital bank account, a wallet, that is something we're deeply involved in as a foundation. And it's spreading. Tanzania, Kenya, Philippines, Bangladesh, those accounts are being opened and are starting to be used by women. And during this pandemic, it made an enormous difference because governments like India put social protection payments through those bank accounts, and they wanted to make sure they got to women because they knew the women spend the money differently than the man does, and she spends it on her family's well-being.
You talked earlier about the problem of violence against women, which I assume has been exacerbated a bit by the pandemic. And you've also written about the problems of genital mutilation in many of the developing markets. Have you seen any progress on those issues in terms of reduction of violence in some areas or reduction of genital mutilation?
It's quite honestly, David, during the pandemic, been very hard to get those statistics, right? Because everybody's in a crisis trying to deal with the current pandemic. But what I do know is that the violence against women numbers absolutely went up. We don't have the gender cutting numbers. I don't have them right now. But on the violence against women, what we saw governments do are some innovative things. So, for instance, in France, a woman could go to a grocery store and there she could report domestic violence. South Africa, they opened unique centers that women could go to get away from an abusive spouse. So governments are really investing in this because they know it's something that is so detrimental for women and for society.
So when you try to have an impact on this issue of gender equality, gender inequality, what do you think has the biggest impact? You're making speeches, you're writing books, you're physically showing up. What do you think has the greatest impact in terms of having people listen to your views and actually making that a change in their positions?
The biggest impact is when we have action. So I speak about these things, I write a book about these things, I stand on stages, but why do I do that? I do that to get so many people to come together and say, we need to create action. We need to demand different policies from our government. We need paid family medical leave in our country. We need to make sure there are laws against child marriage. So it's people coming together that creates action. And that means using your voice, civil society coming forward, government leaders making change, making investments. One of my favorite quotes is from Margaret Mead. She said, never underestimate what a group of committed individuals can do to change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has. And what I have learned is it starts sometimes with a small group of people and leaders in lots of places, but then it grows to become a movement. And that's how you create change.
So the satisfaction you get from working on this issue is evident when a woman tells you you've changed her life, or how do you get the satisfaction and how do you get the communication about the effectiveness of what you're doing?
Oh my gosh, I get letters from people. I meet a student who we put through school here in the United States, and here she comes and says to me, my gosh, this is now what I'm doing and what the job I have because of that. I meet women, in the world who say, oh my gosh, my child is alive here because you supported that birthing center or you made sure that, we actually had contraceptives. So I get that feedback over time, but it's really the biggest joy I get is when you see a mother with their child and then you see that that child grows up healthy and is thriving, right? That's what every parent wants for their children is they want the child to grow up healthy and thriving. And I've gotten to see some of that over time and it's deeply gratifying.
So as you look at yourself as a bit of a role model, as other people do your own children see you as a role model? And do they say, Mom, you really work more on gender equality, or Mom, spend more time with us? Or how do they deal with your needs to be out around the world, but also to be a parent?
Thanks for that question. It's been a balancing act for me when they were young versus older versus now. But one of the things all three of them have said to me in the last 2 months is, Mom, we are so proud of you, of how you fight for what's right. And so, yes, they had to give up something when they were younger. I was on the road a little bit more, and we talk about that. And I say to them, I'm sorry there were times I was gone, but they say, we get what you're doing and we believe in it. And we believe in your values and your integrity. And what we most appreciate is that you're living those out in the world.
Well, at some point, I guess you'll be having grandchildren. I guess you'll be a role model for your grandchildren too. I'm sure you're looking forward to that, right?
I sure am. That'll be a fun phase of life.
So your father worked on the Apollo missions, and did it ever occur to you when he was working on it that there should be a woman going to the moon? And do you look forward to the fact that there probably will be a woman on the moon in the not too distant future, certainly in our lifetime?
I hope the first person that steps on Mars is a woman. I don't know that it occurred to me back then, but boy, does it occur to me now that we need to have a woman be out in space first.
So recently, your alma mater and mine had a woman become an athletic director, now Coach K's boss. And Harvard also had a female athletic director and has one now. So how does that make you feel? When you were at Duke, did you ever think that that would kind of thing would happen, and that you see that as progress in the world a bit?
I definitely see it as progress. And look, as Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, women belong in all places where decisions are being made. So does it surprise me that we have these fabulous female directors of athletics? Not at all. And I think we should have women across the board in places, whether presidents of university, that role, government, civil society, CEOs of companies. All places women need to rise, and it's great to see them rising. But what I know is it takes much more than one woman. You need to have multiple women in multiple positions to change an institution. And I'm looking forward to the day when we get far more women into these positions of power. And we're getting there, but we're not getting there quickly enough.
Linda, I've really enjoyed your book, and this conversation has been, I think, really uplifting for me, and I hope everybody that's been watching, because you clearly have done a terrific job of highlighting these issues and also for being a role model for somebody else. So I want to congratulate you on receiving the medal. I want to thank you for being here today. And let me turn it back now to Dean Tomiko Brown-Nagin. Dean, thank you, Melinda.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, David and Melinda, for that informative and inspiring conversation. Melinda, it's now my distinct pleasure to present you with the 2021 Radcliffe Medal. The Radcliffe Medal is the Institute's highest honor, and we award it each year to an individual who has had transformative impact on society. Recipients of the medal are an illustrious group, and on behalf of the entire Radcliffe community, let me say how delighted I am to officially count you among them. You've received the medal by mail. I invite you now to take it out of its package. Once you're ready, I'll read the citation. Wonderful. She is a pioneering woman in business and philanthropy, a leader who sees every wall as a door. She is a global advocate, steering the world's largest philanthropic organization to confront the challenges facing women and girls and improving the lives of billions of people. She is an investor with both acumen and empathy, advocating women's empowerment because she believes that women's potential warrants investment. Melinda French Gates, I bestow upon you this Radcliffe Medal in admiration of your many accomplishments and your continued work in pursuit of gender equity in the United States and around the world. Congratulations.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. Thank you, Dean Brown-Nagin, for this tremendous honor. And it means so much to me to be in the company of the past recipients of this award, icons for equality like Dolores Huerta, Toni Morrison, Hillary Clinton, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Their legacies have so much to live up to from what they've left behind. And when I think about what makes these women so extraordinary, I think of a line from Harvard graduate Amanda Gorman, the poet who lifted our nation's heart in January. Hope, she writes, is not something you get. It's something you should strive to give. Hope, she reminds us, demands action. I love that idea of hope in action, and I have so much admiration for any woman with the vision to imagine a better future and the courage to use her life and her work to bring that better future into being. In the earlier panel, you heard from a number of women who meet that description. I want to thank them for sharing their insights with us today and for the many ways they're working to advance gender equality across the work that they do. At my core, I'm an optimist. But as I see it, optimism isn't the passive expectation that the world will improve on its own. It's a belief that we can together make it better through the things we do and the choices that we make. I also believe that when more people have the power to put their own hopes into action, the world then gets better for everyone. And that's why I'm so committed to tearing down these barriers, the ones that keep women from living up to their potential as the architects of that better world. In the years since I started my second career in philanthropy, I've traveled around the globe and met women who are contributing to their countries and their communities in so many ways. They're farmers, they're healthcare workers, they're teachers, activists, government leaders, mothers. They give me hope, and I want to give that hope back. Your belief in this work is just one more reason why I'm determined to keep going. So thank you so very, very much.
Thank you, Melinda, and thank you to David Rubenstein, Drew Faust, and to all our distinguished speakers. And of course, thank you to our audience for joining us today. We look forward to seeing many of you in person for Radcliffe Day 2022. I wish you all a wonderful summer.